Hello. Good morning, afternoon. I guess that depends on where you are in the country. I am in Boston, so it's 1 o'clock for me here. So good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to just give this a few minutes so that people can hop on and be let into this webinar. Welcome, everyone. My name is Cheryl, and for those that don't know me, I have been with Cure Duchenne for 5 years on the CARES team, but I also like to say I'm a client because I also have a 22-year-old son with Duchenne and an 11-year-old son, a grandson that has Duchenne. And I'm just so happy that you're here. And one of the things that we talk about often is sharing your story. And that's what we'd like to talk about today is how do you craft your story and share it for awareness and connection. So we are going to record this so that if you want to go back and watch at some point, that would be great. If you look down on your bar below, you'll see the Q&A. Should you have any questions, please feel free to enter your questions in there. We're going to get to the questions sort of at the end of our presentation, but please feel free to, as you have the question pop up in your head, type it in there and we will take a look at it. I would like to thank our good friend Lexi, who is my colleague in the background, who is sort of the wizard behind the screen. She will be doing all of the forwarding of this, and she's helped us in our practice session. And we just really thanks, Lexi, for all your help. Okay, without further ado, I would like to introduce two other colleagues of mine, Jordan Lynch and Emily Perkins.
Hello,
Hi,
everybody.
guys. So, hey,
Cheryl.
Jordan, if you want to intro yourself, that would be awesome.
Yeah, hi. My name is Jordan Lynch. For those of you who don't know me, I work out of the Orange County office here in Newport Beach, and I've been with Cure Duchenne for it'll be 3 years this September. And my the first time I learned about Duchenne was when my nephew was diagnosed back during the pandemic, and I wasn't quite sure what this Duchenne community was about. And then for the last couple of years, I've been far more involved in supporting. And my role at Cure Duchenne is helping families and community members get involved in serving our shared mission to cure Duchenne through various forms of events, awareness, fundraising, really just helping people you know, turn their story into action.
Awesome. Emily.
Hi there, I'm Emily Perkins. I'm Associate VP of Strategic Communications for Cure Duchenne, and I have the very lucky honor and privilege of sharing all of the amazing stories of our Cure Duchenne families and the work that Cure Duchenne's doing to drive towards a cure with the public, with all of our audiences, with donors, with the media, and that kind of thing. So I've gotten the opportunity over the last few years to work with so many amazing stories, amazing families to share their story. So I'm so grateful to everybody who's willing to tell their story because that is the only way we can get this thing cured. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And I know for me, I didn't know what the word Duchenne was until they told me my son had it, right? So, how do you prepare for something that you know nothing about? All right, without further ado, let's get going. Lexi, first slide.
For our agenda today, we're going to cover a number of different topics, but we're going to start with why your story matters, and then we're going to roll right into your stories framework. We have a few slides just talking to different elements of what makes your story and how to think about your story through different lenses as you prepare to share it.
Right. And then we actually have two beautiful people on here, Chris and Riasia, and we're going to let them share their real family story. So we'll have a real example of a family that shared their story and continue to do that. So definitely stay here for them because they're probably the best part of this whole webinar. And then we're going to talk about some story starters, like where do I start? How do I begin my story? My son just graduated with a bachelor's in film and new media. So there's always a beginning, an end, a middle. So there's all these different things, and we're going to talk about where do I start, and then just some tips and tools about how, tools on how to share your story, how we can help as Cure Duchenne share your story, and then some final thoughts of where we are. And then we'll have some Q&A. And just about the Q&A, if we don't get to your question, please ask it anyway, and then we can sort of follow up with you one-on-one at the end if you'd like. And
And
if you want to talk to Jordan and I separate, please reach out to us because we can have a one-on-one with you to go into a little bit more depth.
And for those who maybe just joined recently, if you have a question at any point, just go and type that in and we will address that question at the end.
Right. And so there's a little Q&A button down on the bottom. I just love this picture. When I did a workshop at Futures for palliative care, and she shared this, and I'm like, what a beautiful picture of, hands holding the community. So, Jordan, you want to start with building bridges?
Yeah, so at the core of what we do is really is storytelling. Whether it's fundraising, whether it's raising awareness, whether it's building community, it starts and continues through story. And in a time in a world where it feels like we are very divided, our stories create those connections and create opportunities for us to basically walk together, to be together. And when we share our stories, it raises awareness. It might spark change. It inspires others. When you share your story, it's kind of this gift to the community that you just don't know who's going to pick it up, who's going to be a part of it, who's going to want to do something. Um, and it's remembering that your voice is powerful, and that it's really through these personal stories that we're making an impact. That people are going to connect to you and where you've been, and they're going to see themselves in you, and they're just going to develop a sense of empathy, and they're going to want to be a part and get involved, and 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 be a part of making your story that much more impactful. So, uh, we there's something that Duchenne families have that so many people want. It's this deep sense and clarity of purpose, and it's fighting for their kids, and that's compelling. And sometimes we feel like maybe our story doesn't matter, or I'm a little afraid to share our story. But once we start to see how much people respond and how important it is that we actually do share that story.
Right. And you'd be surprised at who you tell. Often some of my stories start, I was sitting in a bar somewhere, which probably isn't the best way to start a story, but I find like I was in Canada and someone next to me said, "Oh, my nephew has Duchenne," right? So you never know who you will meet. And Duchenne is what our connection is, but we all have different paths, we all have different stories. And so I think it's important to be able to share your personal story because nobody can tell your story like you can, right? And I think it's important to share broader to create that awareness, and you just never know who you're sitting next to. Emily, you want to take the last
Yeah,
one?
and I would just add that last point of people remembering stories and faces over facts and figures. I will tell you, I could spout every fact about Duchenne, but when I introduce a reporter to a family who's going through it, it brings it to life in a way that numbers can't. And that's the same for a donor. That's the same for, any kind of audience you're in front of. And that's the same for you. I'm sure when you're drawn into a story, it's because of the people you're reading about and the faces you're connecting with, that you can relate to your own life, or maybe you can't and you're learning something new. So it's really the best way to bring to life, the messages we're trying to communicate.
No, absolutely. And you'll get better as time goes on.
So
Oh,
the stories framework. So we've broken the stories framework into a few different simple prompts, and we start with our why. And you don't have to go very far to know your why. I imagine your why has a name. It's for me, my why is Ivan, Cheryl, Jake, and sorry, I'm forgetting your grandson's name all of a sudden.
Tyler. Oh
Tyler, thank
man.
you. Thank you. But beyond that, we have our why, who is also a who, but we have why are we sharing this message? So, understanding what your goal is in sharing your message and sharing your story in different places and to different people, that goal might shift. And sometimes it might be to make connections, and it might be making connections with other Duchenne families or other folks in your community to bring them into your store. It could be at your school and working with your school to get an IEP and making sure that they understand really what your son and the story of Duchenne entails so they can best accommodate and support you during the time. It might be raising awareness. As Cheryl mentioned, the first time she heard about Duchenne was at diagnosis. That is a common story, and we'd love for that not to be the story. We'd love for everyone to know about Duchenne so that they don't feel so alone when they're first diagnosed, and they feel that there's a lot of work being done on behalf of those with Duchenne. And it's to inspire action to help people get involved, to be connected, to show support through time, resources, and talent. Um, it's sometimes to change an opinion through advocacy, to helping uh, people see the need and see the need for support or understand your position. And then sometimes it's to reflect and process, to kind of go deeper, to connect with people through story. And there's a richness in that that helps really build a deep sense of community. And that helps, really increase our impact together when we feel together.
And
Um,
people really want to help. They want to help you. They want to, like for me, we've had 5Ks and people want to help Jake, right? So Duchenne is this umbrella, but really they're here to support the Morazzo family. And it's good for you as well, because how good does it feel when people come out to support you and your family? Like it's an amazing feeling. And I think also I also share my story with pharmaceutical companies. And I want that scientist to have a picture of Jake on the wall looking for a cure for Jake, right? So every person that you personally connect with, they take a piece of your story, and I think it's important to sort of leave it and sprinkle it everywhere.
yeah. And the final point here is, when you consider your why, ask yourself, is there a call to action? As I'm sharing this story, is there an opportunity for me to invite people into the story, invite people into an opportunity? It's not always going to be that. Sometimes it might just be sharing just for connection's sake, but maybe it's like, hey, would you help us, share our story as we post on social media? Will you repost? Will you like? Will you share with your friends or family? Or hey, will you come to our awareness event? Or hey, will you be a part of this fundraising event? And so we take our story and often we use it and leverage it to invite others into an opportunity to connect and be a part of it. So sometimes just considering starting with when you evaluate your why, what is your call to action as well?
Mhm. Absolutely. All right, next slide.
So once you know your why, which is the most important thing, I think, the next most important thing is who are you talking to? Who is your audience? Where are they coming from? What do they know and what do they need to know? So that's an important thing to kind of think through. If you're telling your story to family and friends, you may really want to focus on your life and keep it light on the background because they may have heard, they may know about the diagnosis. There may be an audience, most of them that probably haven't heard of Duchenne. So how much context do we need to give to help them understand that? And how do we do that kind of in a concise way? So while you're sharing your story, if you're sharing it to it like a national audience, you may want to include some facts and figures to talk about how many people is this affecting? My story is one of many. And what should they know? What are you trying to drive? There's treatments that are not available that we need to make available. We need to, people don't, I think, understand the scope or breadth of something like that. But your personal story is what's going to bring it to life and make them care about whatever you're driving that call to action. So we gave some just examples. There are many others of audiences you may be talking to. You may be the general public. In that case, you probably do need to give them some background on Duchenne. You may be talking to another family that's facing it too. So you're obviously not going to go deeply into it. They know what you're talking about. Healthcare professionals, donors, local leaders, if you're looking towards advocacy, as Jordan was talking about, maybe it's your child's school for an IEP. They need a little context. Bring them in with some facts about it. And that's something that at Cure Duchenne we can always help with. We have talking points. We have really brief ways to talk about it so that we're all kind of speaking the same language in a way that people can understand about something that's pretty complicated. You can go to the
Absolutely.
next slide. So what's your message? Do you want to start off and I'll follow Cheryl on this one?
Yeah, I mean, so what my message is, it's generally about my family, right? It's about the Morazzo family. And if you've been to any of our workshops, and I encourage you to go to the last few that we have for the rest of the year, I'm doing a shameless plug, but come and listen to my message. I'm very vulnerable. I share the good, the bad, the ugly. And I think my message is what I hope my message is, that people feel less alone. When I first heard Duchenne, you read what's on Google and, it's not good. And so now my son's 22, graduated college. I'm sort of through something. So I feel like I can share things with families to make them not feel, alone or make them feel hopeful, right? We all have that in us. So your message should be very personal, intimate, vulnerable, all of those things. And like for me, my message is about every part of my family, which is not just Duchenne, right? So I try to talk about all of my family. And the part of the story that I'm sharing kind of depends on what Emily was saying, the audience, right? So what I'm sharing kind of depends on who I'm talking to, what my audience is. And sometimes if you're fundraising, sometimes I hate to say it, you need to share some of the really compelling facts. But then in other areas, maybe you don't get into the real heavy stuff, right? So I think that's part of it. Emily, you want to talk about the most important parts that you want to get across in your story?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it right, Cheryl. You're not going to have the opportunity to share your entire story from start to finish. That would take a very long time. So, if you had to whittle down what the most important pieces that you need to convey, that will keep the interest of whoever your audience is. So, for example, are you talking, on a panel to people who are, other parents of other adults with Duchenne? That's, a really specific thing you can do. Or are you going to be on the news talking about an upcoming fundraiser? Then you have to share your personal story, but also why you're doing it and how people can get involved. So knowing, what that piece is, and again, we're happy to help with any of this because you have a lot to your story. So how do we get it? How do we pull out those most important parts, so that we leave them with what we want them to remember? And then finally, I added this on here. I always talk to families, especially before they talk to media, about thinking through, what do you want to share? What are you comfortable sharing? Because I always tell people you are in control of what you share, but you probably need to think through that. So, how is this going to be shared, and what control are you going to have over how it might be presented, edited, etc.? What's the life of this story going to be? There's a few questions that, we kind of guide people to think through. Is it going to be public? Is it going to be public for a long time? How are you going to how are you going to feel about it tomorrow, next week, maybe next year? Because your story will change and evolve. How could sharing your story, positively or, potentially negatively impact, your life, your access to care, relationships you have? Are there other people in your story that you might want to chat with before you share it? Your family members, maybe your child, depending on their age. You know, they are going to be part of how this is represented. So it's usually a good idea to have a conversation with them. Are there specific institutions, organizations that you're going to mention, that should be involved? Maybe, maybe not. And what support might you need through all of this? So sharing your story, and Cheryl, you could probably even speak better to this. It's it's putting yourself out there. It's making yourself vulnerable. It can bring up emotions you didn't expect. What support might you need before, during, and after to process through all of that? And finally, are you ready to get feedback from sharing your story? I think from my experience with media, it's always been pretty positive. People are, that story really resonated with me. They may choose to support you or support Cure Duchenne. But you may get contacted by other families that are living with Duchenne. You may get contacted by other people who want you to share their story with their audience. So there is, a ripple effect that is what we need in order to raise awareness about Duchenne. But those are just kind of some of the exercises I encourage people to go through is, am I prepared to share this? What do I need to make this a positive experience? And I think many of the families who work with, they find it really positive. They find it very empowering. They find it, to be a really great process to go through, and there's outcomes they didn't expect often, where they're supporting other families that they didn't even know would be contacting them. So is there anything you want to add to that, Cheryl?
Yeah, so one of the other things I was thinking is, and don't forget who's going to see it, right? So will your son see this video? Are you comfortable with what you're sharing? And like Emily said, it's going to be there for a while. When Jake and I, thanks to Kier Duchenne, were on the Dr. Phil show, people still bring that up. And Jake is 22 and he was 16 then, right? So you'll look at all that. And what I do love is the ripple effect that you talked about. And I think that's one of the important parts. Like share it with us, share it on social. We need some more positive, beautiful information on there. So please share it. And you only help that person next in line. And as Emily said, we're here to help you. And Chris and Raj are going to pop on here shortly, and they're going to talk about that. Like this is scary, right? What do I say? How do I say it? And you can watch this webinar, but really, we're also here to help you one on one. And Emily has just been amazing at this. When we go to workshops and we try to find local families, she has great contacts, and so it's beautiful. And I love when I see these positive beautiful stories. And I read a book recently that said, be the friend that you wish you had, right? So when I was diagnosed, I wish I had a friend that shared, their story of hope and possibilities and also the bad things. And then just be that person and share it and help others, like who's ever in the hole, dig them out, help them out and get them to share their story. So, I hope I didn't get too off topic there.
You can go to the next slide, Lexi. So where this kind of goes to the thing we were just talking about, where is this going to appear? Those are all valid questions to ask if somebody approaches you, to ask you to, will you come to our conference and share our story? Will you come to our event and share your story? Or whether you're choosing it to share through your own platforms. What's the format going to be? You can ask the question, how long is this going to be posted? How are you going to share it online afterwards? Who am I going to be talking to? Social media is obviously a huge one that Raja and Chris are going to talk a little bit about sharing their story on. But there's also a variety of news media outlets that we may ask you to share your story, or they may approach you directly. Whether you're doing events, we have a lot of different events where connecting with family stories is super important. You may have your own blog or channels to share it on, or we may share it on ours or through emails. And video, super powerful, super compelling. And there's lots of ways to do that.
And I'll just say too, well, a few things. One, with social media, if you ever post your story on social media, just tag Cure Duchenne, and oftentimes we'll repost it and share that with our audience as well. And then at events, we have conferences. Our biggest conference is Futures that we put on, and it's focused on engaging families and sharing resources. And a lot of times every year we have families on stage who are sharing a part of the story of how they're engaging and how they're supporting the Duchenne community. And so sometimes we might ask you to be a part of that, or we have our workshops that Cheryl mentioned where we share stories to connect people who are maybe there for the first time, experiencing Duchenne for the first time, letting them see maybe a story that's been going on a little longer in this Duchenne journey. And so they can find maybe a little bit of hope and see themselves in those stories. And then at fundraising events, we do that in a variety of ways. Sometimes it's on printed materials at our large Napa and Newport event. We had these large displays, and we actually had a number of our Duchenne guys there, and it was an opportunity for them to showcase their skills, their talents, their interests to a community that was a lot of them were learning about Duchenne for the first time. So it was really elevating the importance of our why through our guys, and them being there and just watching them interact and seeing just the joy in their faces. And it was really, really powerful. Or sometimes it might be actually speaking at an event, sharing a portion of your story during a part of the program, or in a written newsletter as we prepare people for the event. So there's a lot of different ways, both through print, through presence, and through actually sharing your story, where we'd like to integrate stories into our events to elevate the why and educate the people who are there.
Right. And I think for the email and the blog, I mean, I remember when I shared with my family the first time that Jake had Duchenne, how do you do that? What do you say? And for blogs, I did start a blog. I probably should get back to it, called My Scarred Heart. But I think it's important to share your story. And there's a lot of Duchenne moms that a lot of you probably follow, right? And you hear their story, you listen to their family story. And while it's not exactly your story, you will find similarities with all of the families. And Chris and Rhea are going to talk a little bit more about the video aspect of it. and how that is very compelling. And it's something that has a much further reach than maybe you would even expect it to be. Emily, anything else there?
No, I'm good.
All right, let's go to when. Let me click on this. All right. I start talking and then Emily. Okay, good. So when is the right moment for you? Well, we all get there, right? I always say that the Duchenne diagnosis is like grief. There's different steps. And maybe you're not ready for right away. Maybe you're not ready for a year or two. Really, you'll know when the moment is right for you. For me, it was pretty quick for me. I waited a few weeks and then I wanted to share my story with my family, with my local community, because and Jordan talks about this all the time. I wanted it to turn into action, my pain. I wanted it to turn into action. So when the right moment really kind of depends on when you're ready. And when you're ready, we'll be there to help guide you through, to how to do it. And just like watch others. I always often watch how others speak and sort of see what they say. And then maybe once it resonates more and more with you, then you're ready. But really, I can't say, well, you should do it within 2 weeks. It's really whenever your heart and spirit is ready to find this right moment to do it.
And the second piece of that is when is it going to have the most impact on the audience? Once you've decided I'm ready to share, when will it matter the most? When will people be most impacted by what you're trying to get them to do? So, we work hard when we have fundraising events to make sure it's the most impactful timing of the event where people are ready to hear the story, to be a part of it, and hopefully be generous. But also, we do special outreach during when it may align with a holiday or observance. Duchenne Awareness Month, is a great example of when people might be paying a little bit more special attention to this. There's also times throughout the year when it makes sense to bring attention to something like this. For you, there might be a personal milestone or call for support that you want to make. Maybe you're trying to raise funds for an accessible van. Maybe you just went to Futures and it was a really powerful, this was something that made an impact on me and I'm ready to share. There may be a moment in your life where you go, this is the time I want to bring people in my circle in.
Perfect. Next slide.
So how? We talked a little bit about video, but obviously photos and videos really are going to bring your story to life in a way that nothing else can. No, to supplement your words. Keeping it authentic, as Cheryl mentioned, is super important. Your words are your words, and as I always say, it's your story. You can't get it wrong. There's no wrong answer. Um, Start small, just get your thoughts down on paper and see where it goes. Something we always have to keep in mind is making sure you're keeping it clear and concise. What I've learned and since coming into this world is there's a million acronyms and terms and words and remembering what your audience knows and what they don't know. A really quick way to lose your audience is start going into jargon they don't understand. And then finally, what's your call to action? How do you want to end it? Don't leave them hanging. Give them something to do. You've brought them in. Now what? And then, once you've kind of gotten it all down on paper, take a step away from it. Come back to it later with fresh eyes, re-energized. Think about your audience. If I were reading it, is there parts that seem unclear? Is there a part that's confusing? Did I not give them context for something? I do that often when I write something. It's like I said something, but then they don't have the background to even know what that meant when I was saying it. How did it begin and end? Is what was your conclusion? And also, this is something that I kind of often forget is there a title? Like what's my subject line of my email? What's my title of my blog? Is it clear? Is it concise? Does it give people a sense of what they wanted to read? Does my first opening bring them in? Like, people's attention spans are so, so, so short and getting shorter. So, we say, it's like not even the first sentence anymore. It's the first few words. because people are not going to read paragraphs and paragraphs. And give them a specific thing to do, this call to action that empowers them to get engaged and be part of your story. That's what we want them to do.
And even if they just share on social media, right? Like share the story so that it's far and wide. Going back to different things we've done, if you see like millions of people have heard the word Duchenne, man, you've done an amazing job, right? So I think it's important. And then the call to action again, people want to help. So how can they help, right? How can they make your life better, easier? And really, when you don't help them, you take away that opportunity from them to help. All right, next.
And this one, we've talked a lot about social media. I wanted to put a slide in here, just a couple of tips on if you're ready, if you want to share your story with media. Of course, I'm happy to work, directly with anybody on how to do this. But if you feel, hey, I'm ready to do this and I can do it on my own, start small, start local. You have a network of people but also, did you go to a college that has an alumni newsletter? That's a great way. They love to highlight their alumni and what they're involved with. Do you have local media? We often, think about big national media. I want to be I want to be in People magazine, or I want to be in, the Wall Street Journal. But there are local papers that are just so hungry for local stories of residents making a difference or get a glimpse into their lives. So, it's as simple as looking on a website of your local here. We've got the Orange County Register. Looking on the website, it might be by city, it might be by county, it might be by state. And finding out who's my local reporter and just shoot them an email. Hey, my name is so and so. I live in X city, and I want to tell you a little bit about what I'm doing in a fundraiser I have coming up to raise money to help my kid. It's so powerful coming from somebody right in the community. And I am telling you, they are so hungry for those kinds of stories, whether it's broadcast, one of your local TV stations, your local newspaper, a local online outlet. We've seen so many families see success with that. And again, we're happy to come in and support either before, after, or during to kind of, sometimes families will contact their local media and they'll say, I want to make sure Cure Duchenne's a part of the story. And then I'll come in and help with facts and figures and how they can donate, or, whatever, or we can take it from the beginning if you're ready to share your story with your local media. So there's a lot of ways it can come about, but I always say, start small, start local.
And you're right. I know that we've been in the newspaper locally, and every town has like this small TV channel, right? So start there and sort of learn your craft but like nothing good than a feel-good story about a local person, right? I think the newspapers totally eat
Human
that up.
interest is what they're all looking for, human interest stories.
Especially these days, we want to hear some personal stories and beautiful stories. Okay, next slide. Yay! Now here comes the best part of our webinar. Jordan and Emily and I are going to get off screen, and I'm going to have Chris and Riasia turn on their camera. And whenever you're ready, guys, there they are. All right. Well, without further ado, I will let you guys take it from here. You want to introduce yourselves, and then we'll move to the next slide.
Sure thing. Good afternoon or good morning, like I said, depending on where you're at. My name is Chris Horn, and this is.
Hi, everybody. I'm Riasia Ford.
And we are out of Orlando, Florida.
Yes, Chris and I co-parent our son, Keelan, who has Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And I also have a son, Kai, and you see them here on the screen. If you could go to the next slide. So we just want to tell a little bit about our family, like just a little background and recap of our story. So with Keelan, our oldest child, well, my oldest child, oh gosh, I found out during the pregnancy that I was a genetic carrier for Duchenne, and we had an amniocentesis done and confirmed that Keelan would be born with the condition. Since his birth, we've been able to have access to exon skipping, and Kai as well. When Kai was born, we found out that he also had Duchenne, and he's been on exon skipping as well. 9 months ago, Keelan was able to receive gene therapy, and we're hoping that when Kai turns 4 in the fall, that he will be able to receive the treatment as well.
Yeah, and that's a little bit of our story. We went to, well, I did for the first time, went to Cure Duchenne Futures Conference in 2024. And going to that conference, I realized, first of all, we all have unique stories, but I realized that ours was a little more unique with us finding out in utero. And also, I found a community at that same time that showed me that I needed to share our story. Before that, I played college football, so I have a typical football mindset of kind of you just wrap it up, suck it up, and play it through. And that's what was the mentality I took towards this diagnosis with our son. It was not anyone else's necessarily to take on or for us to share. It was more so for us to hold close to the vest and take care of it ourselves. Going to Cure Duchenne or Cure Duchenne Futures 2024 made me realize that me not sharing Keelan's story and Kai's story was ultimately selfish and was not serving my child. Also, with the uniqueness of our story, I realized that these kids can be beacons of hope for other newly diagnosed families because of our unique track that we're taking, with them being on a medical plan since being almost 1 years old. So uh, that's what made me want to share more is like they talked about earlier, talking about your audience on our community standpoint. I wanted to share the story so newly diagnosed families could look at our boys and look at us like it's not necessarily a death sentence as we were told when we got diagnosed. There is a path forward. There is a fruitful and fulfilled life that these children can have, and fulfilling, excuse me. And so that was a part of why I want to share on the community side. In general, just like every one of you who are here who are affected, we wanted to share with the masses to raise awareness of this battle that we're taking on, as it's not as known as some of these other battles that people take on in their lives.
Mhm. Initially, once we got the diagnosis, I was not able to share immediately. It took me a while to get to the point where I felt comfortable to do so. It felt very, like the topic was very sensitive to me. I felt very vulnerable, and I think I was just afraid of the unknown. And I felt hurt. So hurt for the boys and what I thought that they were going to go through and what I thought it looked like. But I actually attended my first Futures conference in 2022. And at that time, both of the boys were under the age of 2. They were babies. And that was my first time really seeing other families and other boys with Duchenne. And I think once the initial impact was, I was very emotional to see like the first power chair rolling by, and I'm like, this is our, my mind went to all of the negative places that it could have went to. But as I listened to the different panels and I learned about the different options, the treatment options that were available, and all of the pharmaceutical companies that were doing work to try to create drugs that were going to remedy this illness, that's what really gave me hope going to that conference. And from that point, I finally found the courage to start speaking up about it with friends and family is where I started. And eventually it led to me sharing on social media. And now that I'm confident in sharing, I've been posting pretty regularly and trying to share, bring awareness to the situation that we're in. And I feel like it's been honestly therapeutic in a way. And I feel like we've kind of taken our power back by sharing. So you could go to the next slide for us. And this will be an example of one of the social media posts that I shared. If you could play the video, it's going to show. My children were diagnosed with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, also known as DMD. Duchenne muscular dystrophy is a rare degenerative neuromuscular disease that occurs in approximately 1 in 5,000 male births. There are 15,000 cases of Duchenne muscular dystrophy in the United States and 300,000 cases worldwide. Individuals that are affected by DMD slowly lose their ability to walk, feed themselves, breathe independently, and succumb to heart failure. There is no cure. Some individuals living with DMD have treatments that can significantly slow the progression of the disease. However, many people affected do not have treatments. It depends upon what part of the gene is mutated. Individuals with DMD. Okay, and that was a very long post that I had made. It was just an example, and it reached, like it says, 17,000 people. So for me, seeing all of the people interacting with us and letting us know, like, hey, we're going through the same thing, it kind of reassured me and that I was doing the right thing by sharing. Um, and then as a result of us sharing,
Yeah,
some great opportunities came up.
absolutely. Similar route as Reasia. Shared I really shared with immediate family and then close friends as well. And then going from the conference, started sharing more specifically because Keelan did have his gene therapy fastly approaching, and that was going to require quarantine. And therefore, me and him would not be available for about 4 months, 3 to 4 months. So talking about that and sharing with my friends led to one of my friends who coached for the New York Giants at the time to do my cause, my cleats. If you can go to the next slide, please. My children were diagnosed with Duchenne. So if you have seen this post before, it was truly a surprise, and it came from me just speaking up and advocating for Keelan and talking about in depth our situation, and that inspired one of my closest friends to do my cause, my cleats last October. He's one of the coaches, so this is one of the coaches' footwear, and from there, that surprise, I recognized how big of a brand the NFL was when he did that for me, and immediately reached out to the Cure Duchenne teams. To be honest with you, I just thought that this was going to be a social media post that they had posted on the IG page or Facebook, but actually what came from that is so many opportunities. We shared it with the team, and the team immediately asked if they could share this with local media outlets. And we gave them a go ahead to do that, and that's exactly what they did. And we had a slew of interviews on the news circuit. I think timing had to do with it as well as during the holiday season. So there was some feel good aspects to it, and I think that was a part of it. Uh, but yeah, the team got us lined up some interviews, and Cure Duchenne was super helpful in getting us prepared and ready with materials and talking points on it, just to get us comfortable with being in front of the screen. For us, we've never been on TV or news stations or things of that nature before in our lives, so it was a little nerve-wracking leading into it, but the team had us fully prepared and comfortable with going into it.
And I think ultimately the goal of us speaking even here today is just to encourage you all to speak up and share your story as well. There's so much power in it. I think despite the fears or any vulnerability that you may feel, it honestly helps the cause, and it empowers the boys, it empowers us as families. It teaches people about what our kids are going through and how can we help keep them included in everything. How can we help people understand what's going on? You never know who is going to contribute to what we have going on, like how we unexpectedly had a friend share this on a big platform to spread awareness. Um, I think that also it could help other families that come across your story once you share. So,
And like I said, this was just one aspect from those interviews. We've been asked to speak at Futures as recent as last month. Um, we were asked to partake in some pharmaceutical companies, asked us to take part in some panels as well, and things of that nature. And honestly, we're going to get more involved because of this experience.
so thanks for listening to us share our story, and I hope that you find encouragement through this to share your story as well.
Please, please. And just so you know, sharing your story, if you need anything, the Cure Duchenne team is here to support you in formulating that story and taking the best approach to sharing it. I can only advocate them through the ceiling because they had us fully prepared to take on this media tour that we went on to share this cause.
Okay.
Share. I love hearing them, seeing them. They make me smile. Um, we want to make sure that they follow you. So I want to make sure that we can put in your so someone just said, thank you for sharing and spreading awareness. We also have a son named Kai who is 4. So see, there's that connection already right there. Um, so that was, oh gosh, that was so beautiful. I just remember when I first met them, and then when they were on the stage at Futures, their story is so beautiful in so many ways. I can't say enough beautiful things about those people. All right. Whew. I don't know if I need a tissue like I did at Futures, but like, let's see how that goes. All right. So we wanted to talk a little bit about, okay, so how do I start? Where do I start? What is the beginning of my story? For us, we always say we don't live the diagnosis, we live the life. Not that I'm telling everybody to come up with a tagline, but here are some ways that you can talk about your story. The day we got the diagnosis, dot, dot, dot. If you, we all know where we were, what we were doing. I know what I was wearing, and you kind of know what it is. And how did you feel? And Riesha does a beautiful job of that as well, as sharing the devastation that turned into hopefulness, right? So definitely do that. And then what I wish people knew, like what do I wish people knew about Jake? What do I what do I wish people knew about Duchenne, my community? I wish that people would not park in the wrong parking spot, right? So really hone in on those thorns, but also those beautiful roses that you want people that you wish they knew more about. I always feel like nobody understands what we're going through except for everybody on this call. But really, let's get these people in and what do I wish that they knew that maybe they would think twice about parking in a handicap spot, right? And then what was that moment that changed us? What was that in sales, we call it like that aha moment, right? What was that moment where you're like, wow, this really changed me. Now I really want to share my story. What was that moment for you? And then why do we share our story, right? Sometimes Jake will be like, Mom, can you please stop talking? But I can't. It's not my fault. As you all know, I like to chit chat. But I share my story because I want people to not feel alone, right? I mean, did you feel alone when you first got any diagnosis? Um, I share our story so that people don't feel alone and that people root for Jake and they root for the Marazos and everybody else in our community. So I think the story starters are sort of like you got a blank page, man. How are you going to write it? And we are here for you to help you, right? So there's a start, but then you got to keep going through, right? So we're here to help you with that. Jordan, anything to add on that?
I just, as you are articulating your story, I think it's so important to learn our story as well as at Cure Duchenne. So as you are sharing your story, you're also sharing the work that Cure Duchenne is partnering with you with, and so people see that it's there's organizations that are mobilizing people and resources to affect change, and that your story is interconnected with that.
Right. And one of the things that I totally forgot to mention in the beginning of this is Cure Duchenne has been around for 22 years. And it was started by Paul and Deborah Miller, whose son Hawken was diagnosed with Duchenne. And they're like, what do we do? How do we share our story and turn it into action? And I love listening to when they talk about, stuffing envelopes in their bedroom, to start raising money and, look at where we are now with 8 approved medications and things like that. So Cure Duchenne was started by a family just like you, right? And they just put action and into in power and like they're getting it done, man. So when you think about Cure Duchenne, I mean, your story is also Deborah and Paul's story, right? So it's important to know that we're all one big community. And what do we want? We want a cure, right? So there's that. Sorry, Deborah and Paul, I forgot to shout you out at the beginning, but there you go. All right.
So just kind of wrapping up with a few tips and tools. I mean, there's a million things out there that can help you be more efficient and, not have to use pen and paper if that's not what's easiest for you. Whether you use the notes app on your phone when you're just, thinking through things, make a voice memo, record yourself, tell your story, have it transcribed and, and see what that looks like. Chat GPT is a great place. Put an outline in there, put all of your key points, see what you can get out of that. I always say, with Chat GPT, don't use it directly from ChatGPT. In fact, don't use more than, 3 or 4 words in a row from ChatGPT because the editing is all of it. But those can help you kind of create, maybe you put your notes in there and say, help me create an outline for a story. Maybe you say, my story is 2 pages long, make it 2 minutes long for a speech. There's a ton of things you can use something like ChatGPT for. Having a story bank, where you're keeping some of the best photos that support your story, some of the videos you have, maybe some quotes that you'd like to save. I know we have story banks here that we use all the time of quotes from families and photos. Cheryl talked about using real language. Your tone will reflect your truth and draw people in, bring the emotion into it. We talked about saying it out loud or recording yourself. You can put it all in there and then you can edit it down and whittle it down. And we've said this a few times, but really can't, put too fine a point on it. How are you going to invite your audience to be part of your story? The worst thing to do is leave them hanging. You've drawn them in, you've gotten them engaged. Do you want them to support Cure Duchenne so that they can, fund a cure for your son and the thousands of others out there? That is really the most important part to think through at the beginning, and then don't forget to do it at the end.
Perfect. I have to laugh with ChatGPT. I think it's my husband's best friend, but it really does give you some, it's actually helped me write better. Right now, I don't even have to go to it as much, but it is good. But you're right. You have to be a little careful with it. All right. I can't believe we're almost at the end of this. And so let's talk about some final thoughts. There's no wrong way to share your story. Jordan said this at the beginning. It's your story. You can't screw it up too much. And people would always say to me, "Are you nervous to share your story?" I'm like, "Well, it's mine, so hopefully I'll do okay with it." But there's no wrong way to share what your truth is. Um, share one part of your story this week with someone and let us know how it goes. Like, did we help you? Obviously we want these webinars to be helpful and productive for you. So we would love to sort of see where it goes from here, right, Jordan?
Yeah, and for us, this next bullet point, this is our invitation and call to action to you and anyone who is watching today, but also this will be recorded and shared. So if you're listening to the recording, we'd still love you to share your story with us. And whatever way you're comfortable with, whether that's in written form or where you want to get your cell phone and talk through it, we would love to. We're creating a bank of stories so that as we have different opportunities, we have a good starting point. We know maybe who to reach out to. Hey, there's a news outlet in your area that would love to have a story that really aligns well with your story, and or we have a fundraising event or awareness event. So it's a help us to better incorporate your journey into the story that we're telling to our stakeholders in the community as we're trying to affect change. And so be a part of that. So call to action is after this, think through what your story is, write it down, record it, send it to us at cares@cureduchenne.org. And would love to learn more about you. And if you would like to have feedback, we're happy to set up a call. Emily's, obviously she's mentioned that she's willing to be a part of that journey with you too. So we want to be a resource in that regard.
And then by learning the Cure Duchenne story, we all become together, right? We're all the Cure Duchenne family, which is really what we all want. So as you learn our story and weave it into your story, together we're writing this strong future where we will cure Duchenne, or that is definitely our hope at this point. And then coming up next, well, two things. We would love for you to send us feedback as to what you thought of this webinar. What are some of the other things that we could at Cure Duchenne help you with in your community? We're here for you. I mean, I'm on the CARES team and it's all about the community. So we are here for you. So please let us know what you want to see next. How can we help you get your story through and get more of your community engaged with your family, and then Cure Duchenne as well. And then our next webinar, which we haven't scheduled yet, but we will be like, okay, now we've done this webinar. You've maybe shared your story with people. How do we turn it into more action? How do we make that snowball much bigger, right? How do the ripple effects get wider and wider around? You'll feel less alone when we're all together, right? Jordan, you want to have any final thoughts?
Just that we're here for you. We are your champions, your advocates, and we want to come alongside you and support you and resource you, because we know that as your voice is amplified, our voice is amplified, and um, the our story just is going to generate more and more impact, and that's how we move the needle on this thing. That's how we raise more money and resources to invest in treatments. That's how we raise more awareness so new families can get connected and feel supported. It's so important that we share our story together and come together as a united front in this, and that's how we're gonna defeat this thing. And there's a quote, an African proverb I love to share. So if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And we've come a long way, but we have a long way to go. And so we need to go together, and we need your story to be a part of ours. So we appreciate you being a part of this opportunity, and we hope that we can continue to support in different ways like this.
Right. And share our story, right? We want to be able to reach as many families as we can. So when you see something, please share your story. So there were a couple of questions that had come up. One was a comment, but yes, this is being recorded. So you will have this up on our website within, I don't know, a week or so, I'll say. I'll give them some time to get everything put together. But please watch it again and also share it with everyone. We don't want you to feel alone. I know we say we're here for you, but like we really are. Like we don't just say that. That's really what we're here for. Um, does anyone have any final questions? And again, if something comes up after this, please send us the question at cares@cureduchenne.org. And even if it's for Chris or Riesia, because we'd love to share them with you as well. So if you have any questions for them about how they made it through. But other than that, I don't see any other questions. You want to hit the next slide, Lex? So thank you for being with us. I just really want to thank Chris and Riesia for coming on and sharing their story. They're such a beautiful family, and I definitely want you to follow them on Instagram and things like that. So I'll follow up with an email after this. With a link to the YouTube to watch this, but I also will share their handles, right? Their Instagram and Facebook. I don't know if handles. Maybe I'm aging myself with that term, but we'd love to see that. And then Jordan, Cheryl, and Emily, we're all here for you to help you with anything, not just about your story, but anything that is Duchenne related. And you guys want to finish with any parting words?
I'm just thankful, Chris and Asia, you guys did great. I love the confidence that you're building, the story you're creating together, and it's really powerful. So thank you so much for being a part of it today.
Here they
Have
are.
it. Hey there. No problem. Well, Ty's having a little fit here, so mom's dealing with it. But yes, we're happy to share our story, and I'm happy to partake in, impact community any way we can.
Awesome, Emily.
I'm just grateful for all these families who are going through so much, but willing to share it, because that's the only way we're going to get where we're going. So I'm just grateful to all of you.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again, everybody. Make sure you go onto our website and look at upcoming events. I will be in Orange County in August, where I'll share my family story. So maybe we can connect while we're there. And there's also a dinner session in Orlando. So thanks again. Please reach out if we can help with anything. And Emily and Jordan, I'm so blessed to work with you, two beautiful people. So thank you so much
Right
for,
back at
for
you,
being
Cheryl.
here. Thank you so much for being here. All right, everybody. Have a good rest of your day. Take care. Bye.
So